The next item is a report that we had intended to give to you at the last meeting, and I think we went a little long, and so we kicked that to this meeting. And this is simply just to kind of give some general knowledge about the impacts on the county when we have annexation. And so I've tried to put together just a couple of major points just to talk about why we need a healthy solution when we talk about jurisdictional boundaries and services and who provides which services and how revenues, how do we each live, towns within our boundaries or the county with the services that we provide. And we do need to have healthy solutions for all of those jurisdiction organizations. So, and the real principle here and why it is such an issue when you talk about the county is that annexation costs all county residents more money in taxes, and I'll walk you through how that works. As the town, of course, when the town annexes, what they do is they will add a real estate and personal property tax that will overlay onto the county real estate and personal property tax. So you in essence, you'll have two different layers, and the top layer that will go to the town to provide services that added services such as curbside pickup or recycling. They have enhanced policing services. I believe they have some street lighting and things like that. In addition, though, of course, there are county revenues that also get diverted or redirected, if you will, to the town whenever there's annexation. And so there are some specific, it's what we call other local taxes, that right now they come to the county, they help us to pay the bills, whether it's for education, the health department, social services, the courts, the sheriff's deputies. Those revenues come, and we have actually become pretty dependent on those revenues. Absent those revenues, we don't have a lot of other resources we can turn to. Unlike cities and towns, we're not allowed to tax cigarettes and some of those other things. And so our tools in our toolbox are limited. And so as those revenues with annexation get redirected and they no longer come to the county, they then go to the towns, we have to make that up in some way because the services that we have don't go away. We don't transfer services to the towns. We don't transfer the expense. The only thing that transfers is the revenue. So the way we make that up, typically it's in the real estate tax bill because that's where you really have any flexibility or authority to make that change. And we all know that the county real estate taxes are paid not just by those that are in the county boundaries, but also by those that live in the towns. So the 85 cent that you currently have as a real estate tax rate applies to those in the town and the county. And when there's annexation and some of those other revenues get diverted out, you then have to increase that 85 cent, which increases again to those living within the town and the county. This next slide is a little difficult to explain, so I'm going to do my best and try to go a little slow. But when you look at, this is basically the county's budget. So the left-hand box shows all of the revenues and all the various line items that we collect monies from to run the county. And if you look, they total to a little over $70 million, okay? On the right-hand side are all the various services that we provide to everyone in the county. So we have everything from education, which is running the school system, our debt service, our capital costs. Of course, we know right now we're subsidizing our utility fund to a pretty high level. Our building maintenance for all the county facilities, parks and recreation, all of those services are listed on the right-hand side. And again, they total $70.4 million. When you look at just real estate and personal property, and this is the residential component that typical homeowners pay in the county, in the town, that generates about 60% or $42 million a year to run the county. So that's only about 60% of the bill. So that's highlighted in orange. And if you wanted to look at just what that would fund, that is just enough to cover just those top four line items. So if you add up all of the residential real estate and personal property, that's just covering education, debt, the utility add-on, building maintenance, and parks and recreation. All of those other services that are listed in the right-hand column have to be covered by other revenue. It's got to come from somewhere. So let's look over at the green box on the left-hand side. Those are what we call other local taxes or spin-off revenue. Those are the taxes that we impose as a county, and so long as the house or the business is within the county boundaries, those revenues come to the county. But when the business or the residence is within a town, those revenues are diverted to the town. So if you look currently, that represents about 10% of our general fund budget. So annexation has an impact because it's going to dip into and pinch into about 10% of the revenues that are coming from all of those green highlighted line items.
Do the people that decide whether a portion can be annexed, do they take those things in consideration, or is it just gone?
No, it's gone unless you have a voluntary agreement, which is what most communities do. When they sit down, they typically will say, well, if your idea is that you need to have more land to grow, we may be okay with that, so long as you continue to allow these revenue streams to come to the county.
Exactly.
Now, the towns can apply a higher rate than we can apply. So what you might consider is, for example, if you look there, meals tax. We're capped at 4 cents. That's all we can do. But the towns can go, I don't even believe they have a cap. Typically, the meals tax is about 6 to 8 cents. So one of the things that you can talk to the towns when you're negotiating is saying, we need to keep at least the first 4 cents. You can tax above that, and that will be extra revenue to come to you. But the county, in order to maintain those services that are listed on the right-hand side, needs to maintain that revenue stream, or we're going to have to increase real estate taxes on everyone, which will increase the taxes to the town residents and the county residents. So I think that that's an important, again, difficult slide to explain. What I also wanted to point out here, in the right, you see I've got the revenues, then I have the county revenues listed there in the next column, then I have diverted to the towns. And what I've done is I've taken 2014 revenues and I've added them up for both the county and the towns together. And we've got about $3.1 million that we are losing to the towns based upon whether it's school-age population or, the business is located there, so the business license goes to the town, or the motor vehicle is located there, so the motor vehicle license goes to the towns. All your lodging taxes, bank stock taxes.
What is bank stock taxes? 97%?
It's based, and it's a small dollar figure. It's not, and what the percentages demonstrate is the percent that currently goes to the town. Okay. So when you look at sales and use tax, 15% of what's collected in the entire county goes to the towns. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Sales and use tax is distributed based on school-age population, even though if you look in the far right-hand column, the county is responsible for education of all kids. There's no town contribution towards that. A lot of this goes towards just archaic state rules. These are not town rules. Town has done a great job. They've really, they've built a beautiful township. It's just a matter of we've got some archaic state code regulations that set up how revenues are distributed. And so absent some voluntary negotiation of revenue distribution, it causes a big problem for all 36,000 county residents when we talk about losing some of those revenue streams.
So we lose about $3.1 million every year.
Yes.
Which is about 8 cents of real estate tax.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. A little bit, about 8.5. So that's what this slide is there to demonstrate. Next slide. What I've done here, I've really kind of covered it in the last, I pulled that green box out and made it a little bit bigger so everyone could see it. And what we're showing here is about 10% of our revenues currently that we receive are coming from these revenue streams, and that's after losing the $3.1 million. With annexation, that would erode even further. Now, what that number is, each of these line items would have to be calculated independently. But it's not just what you lose today, it's what you lose in your growth as you bring in new business. The idea that the ideal world in government is that you live within the natural growth. We know that cost of living is going to go up, we know that expenses are going to go up, but hopefully if you're growing at the same rate, your natural growth is paying for those expenses.
Ms. Seward,
Yes.
That 3.1 million, that is not the additional real estate tax that the town puts on, right?
It has nothing to do with real
simply-
estate. Yes.
It's simply revenue that would be coming to the,
Didn't have any
it's not like that
towns.
both towns complete budget or nothing of that?
No,
nature?
what I did was I added up, for example, for meals tax. I added up the county's collection, the town of Smithfield and the town of Windsor, and then I normalized, see, the town of Smithfield and the town of Windsor have a higher rate. I normalized that rate to the 4 cent, which we're capped at, and what I'm showing there is what we lose. So that's actually, there's,
At our rate.
at our rate,
See,
not at
so-
their rate.
So the towns are getting not 3.1 million in this case, they're getting far more than that.
Yeah. I normalized what we lose, so they actually collect more.
And I commend you for thinking that all the way through to standardize that, so it was in that manner. But if you, one thing this points out, like the business license tax is 53%. So that means if your growth is within the town, your growth for the county is negligible. You know, it's not that. So that's why it's important that when you see these percentages that are already there, you understand, we understand, or better understand the relationships, and
Yes.
appreciate this effort to share it. There's a lot involved. Seems some of the numbers are small, percentages are large, but other percentages are smaller, but the numbers are larger because it gets to $3.1 million that we would have. If we didn't have any towns in the county, it would be 8 cents lower real estate tax. Everything else equal.
And again, I want to reiterate, I'm glad we have the towns. They bring a
Oh,
lot
yeah,
of
yeah, no,
value.
no, no.
They're
I'm
wonderful.
not complaining, but at least
I
one.
commend them for what they've done. It's a matter of how do we move forward and make sure that we all stay healthy. Because you don't want one to flourish at the cost of the other, because we're all the same. We're all the same. We're all county folks paying in. So, next slide. So again, just kind of talking about why we need a healthy solution. And I spoke about the sales tax. When there's annexation, that shifts the school population into the town, which means that you have less sales tax revenue that comes to the county. And by that, sales tax is distributed based upon the count of children that you have in the county and the percent that live in the towns. And so right now, about 15% of our sales tax is going to the towns. But schools, if you go back and look at that other slide, which I'm not going to ask you to do that, but that's our biggest expense. And so this is, again, an archaic state regulation. It's just how it's done. It's not something the town decides or we decide. It's something that the state decides. But it's why it's even problematic as we move forward, because, again, we're working so hard on economic development to build business, but when annexation takes us in the complete opposite direction. Right now, we lose about $400,000 a year in sales tax that goes to the two towns. Again, with annexation, new businesses follow population density. That's natural, it's understandable, and it's encouraged. So as you have increases in the town's population, that again, it draws the business tax revenue out of the county into the town boundaries. And again, the county still pays all those related debt service costs and fire and rescue and roads and all of those impacts, because those are services that are paid for by the county, not the town. And I'll show you a slide on the services and the distribution in just a minute. Again, added residential town development adds also more service costs to the county, because again, we are responsible for things like schools, transportation networks, refuse disposal. We pay for refuse disposal even for those residents that live within the town. The refuse collection is paid for by the town, but the SIPSA tip fee of $125 per ton, that is a county expense that's paid for all of the residents that live in the county, regardless of if you're also in the town or not. Libraries, that's a county expense fully. Fire and rescue, fully county expense. Of course, our sheriff's department, they do court papers. They also do police enforcement. They do a myriad of things. That's all a county expense. Now, the towns do have an added layer of policing. That is paid for by the town's taxes. But the court system is a 100% county-funded expense. All of our health, mental health, social services programs are paid for through the county's general fund, as well as our animal control and numerous other mandates that none of us like, but we have to pay for, stormwater, etc. So all of those are paid for through the county tax dollars. This slide, again, hard to see, I realize, but it basically summarizes all of those services that are provided by the county on the left-hand side. So it lists everything from general government, your voter registration, so running the registrar's office, court operations, our public safety, again, and what we've tried to do is show a column that demonstrates that it's a county-wide responsibility to pay for. And then in the other column, it's where the town either participates in that expense or they have their own service. And so where there's nothing in the right-hand column, it means that it's a county-provided service that's indicated in the left-hand column. So again, you'll see there under public safety. Law enforcement, as I've mentioned, the sheriff's department covers county residents and town residents when it comes to courts, civil papers, etc. The town police, however, cover the law enforcement within the towns. Animal control is 100% of a county function. 911, we have a shared service with the towns, and so currently the town does pay in about 17% of that expense, but 83% of that is paid for by the county tax dollars. Fire and rescue is 100% the county. Emergency management, jail operations, and that means incarcerated individuals in the county, that's 100% county funded. Building inspections and enforcement, that's done by the county. That's not done within the towns. Public works, so when we look at refuse collection, again, I spoke about in the towns, there is a fee that's paid that goes towards refuse door-to-door pickup, but the disposal cost, again, is an expense that the county pays to SIPSA. Buildings and grounds maintenance, again, health and welfare, social services, the health department and mental health services. 100% of education, which is our biggest expense here in the county. Parks and recreation, the towns do have some added amenities such as Windsor Castle Park. They do pay that expense, but all the other parks and recreation facilities in the county are borne through the county tax dollars. All three of our libraries, those are funded solely by the county. Community development, so our planning and zoning, again, the towns do have their own planning and zoning officials, but the county has that I believe they coordinate to some degree, but there is a problem, and we'll talk about that, of when development is approved within the county, we need to have coordination because all of these service impacts are an automatic pay to the county. So it's an automatic hit to the real estate tax rate when there's development that occurs inside those towns that we don't have some impact on. Stormwater management, again, that's a county function. Erosion and sediment control is a little bit of a partial thing. I think the majority of that's done by the county staff, but some of that is done by the town. Economic development and transportation, again, we pay for the road networks. It's our $50 that go towards VDOT applications. We do share, we have a good relationship with our tourism. We share that on a 50-50 basis. And then farm services, which is cooperative extension. That's 100% county funded. Of course, all the county's debt, and then again, that supplement for public utilities, which is a significant supplement, and then capital is also 100% county funded. Next slide. So we talked a little bit about the town land use decisions and how that can mean no cash proffers for the county to help when there is a development that's approved and it adds, a large number of school-age population, or it may have some transportation network issues. Those are automatic expenses that are the county's to pay for. So without some collaboration and cooperation on those land use decisions, it can mean no cash proffers. No cash proffers mean, and basically it's a mandate to the 36,000 residents to pay for that impact in their real estate. Then lastly, the county, as we move forward, really does need to be the water source provider to our residents within its boundaries. And I'm not talking about within the town, I'm saying the residents within the county's boundaries. Like it or not, we've gone out and secured quite a bit of water. And that's to be sure that we have availability as we move into the future. So to the extent that we currently have this plethora of water that we're not using through our own water source, but we also are buying it from the Smithfield and buying it from Windsor and even from the city of Franklin. We currently are getting water from 4 different water sources when one is more than adequate to provide everything that we need. But we continue to buy water from the towns and from the city of Franklin, even though we have this other expense that is beyond our ability right now to pay for just in our utility fund. About 18% of our real estate tax rate is going to supplement our public utilities fund. So of the 85 cents, 15 cents that we pay is because we are supplementing our public utilities water agreements. So we need to have customers so that we can pay that debt. Next slide. Are there any questions?
Question, Ms. Seward? Seward, before you, if there are any questions, thank you for that. By the way, I'd like to get a copy of that. If I
Yes,
could.
sir.
I'd like to do that. Let's take a 5-minute break.